The Wild West that most people grew up believing was a complete myth, created by TV and movies. The history of the Wild West is filled with stories of riches and murder, but there were never quick-draw gunslingers who could shoot a 6-gun out of your hand with another 6-gun. However, this did not stop myths being created, and over the years became even more exaggerated. So let's examine some of the facts. Here are 5 Wild West mysteries that have never and may never be solved. Number 5. Tom Horn and the murder of Willie Nickel. Steve McQueen immortalised the story of Tom Horn in 1980 with the movie of the same name. Horn was something of both an outlaw and lawman. The 1890s saw the decline of the once profitable business of cattle ranching. The business had grown up too fast and too large for the demand, and the problem was only exacerbated when ranchers came up with the bright idea to just buy more cattle. They didn't want to blame themselves for the fact that they were in over their heads, so they pretended that their cattle were being stolen, so as to claim on insurance. So they blamed their problems on cattle rustlers. They would hire people like Tom Horn to solve the problem of cattle rustlers using whatever means necessary. We know that Horn did kill some men, but we don't know for sure just how many there were. We also know that he was hanged for the murder of Willie Nickel, which is a crime he didn't commit. No one managed to prove that he was either innocent or guilty of the murder, and no one is sure who fired the shots that ultimately killed 14-year-old Willie Nickel. Horn's reputation preceded him in the eyes of the United States Marshal Joe LaForce after Nickel was killed. LaForce was the man in charge of investigating the shooting. He arranged a meeting with Horn under the pretense of offering him a job hunting down cattle rustlers. Horn was drunk and boastful, reportedly making incriminating statements that he had been the one behind the shooting. This was enough to put Horn on trial, and even though his defence argued that every piece of evidence was entirely circumstantial, he was found guilty and hanged on November the 20th, 1903. The case was re-examined 90 years later with a mock trial, and it was found to be unlikely that Horn was involved with the killing at all. To this day, it still isn't known what happened to young Willie Nickel, but his family has been part of a neighbourly feud that had lasted a long time, and it's believed that the reason for his death is related to the feud. Number 4. Kehoe. Kehoe was an enigmatic figure in his time, and his legacy wavers between his being a bogeyman, a scapegoat, and a serial killer. We didn't know much about his early life, or indeed his life in general. He was born to a Native American woman in the 1880s and to an unknown father. This mixed heritage meant that he was an outsider from birth. It is said that his first experience with murder was the murder of his own brother, Avote, who had killed another man. Kehoe left his Colorado home and moved to Las Vegas, which was a booming frontier town at the time, around 1910. Even back then, Sin City was in full swing, and Kehoe was corrupted by whiskey. It didn't take long for the name of Kehoe to be used to scare children into behaving. His name was also attached to several unsolved murders. It took only a few years for any mysterious death to be associated with Kehoe. He quickly gained a bounty of $2,000 and so made the smart decision to disappear from society. Sometime later, in 1940, a mummified corpse was discovered in a cave near Hoover Dam. It was declared to be the body of the elusive Kehoe due to the double row of teeth. His remains would be moved around for a while, including being used as a centerpiece for a Las Vegas Elks replica of the cave he was found in. It would be stolen, scattered, and then recovered once more. The body was finally buried, but no one knows for sure if the man was guilty, falsely accused, or indeed both, guilty of some crimes and innocent of others. Number 3. The body parts of Pancho Villa. Francisco Villa, also known as Pancho Villa, went from being an outlaw to a respected military leader in just a few decades. He had become one of the most infamous figures in the Mexican Revolution by the time that he died. He had retired from being an outlaw and retired from the military in 1923, but his successor was still worried about his existence even when he was a retired rancher. Sure enough, poor Pancho Villa would be assassinated. Villa was buried at Hidalgo del Parral in Chihuahua, Mexico. His tomb was broken into 3 years later and his corpse was decapitated. No one knows what happened to Villa's head, but there are several rumours and stories about it. Villa's granddaughter says that more than just his head was missing when the body was disinterred and moved to Mexico's Revolution Monument. His family said that only some of his bones were left when the body was moved in 1976, and no one knows what happened to the rest of him. Some people believe that even the few bones found in this grave were not his at all, and that his widow arranged for his body to be removed after it had been decapitated. His body was supposedly switched with the body of a nameless woman who had gone to Parral. No one in the city knew who she was, and there was no one who was willing to claim her body and bury it. Her body was beheaded and then put in Villa's grave as a decoy for those who attempted to desecrate the grave. This still leaves the question of what happened to his bones. A pawn shop in El Paso claimed to be in possession of Villa's trigger finger, and they were selling it for $9,500. Another rumour suggests that the skull ended up in the possession of the Skull and Bone Society of Yale, but one of the people interested in possessing Villa's trigger finger claimed that they already had his skull. It's doubtful that the skull the buyer possessed, or indeed the trigger finger in the pawn shop, will ever be identified as belonging to Pancho Villa. Number 2. What is a Thunderbird, and are they still around? On April 26, 1890, a number of newspaper reports from Arizona and California in the late 1800s reported sightings of a giant winged creature that resembled a pterodactyl. Apparently, 2 ranchers had killed the winged monster, which resembled a huge 92-foot in length winged beast with an 8-foot long head. Native tribes all across North America, especially along the Pacific coast and in the Great Lakes area, have stories depicting enormous birds of prey. A Cherokee treasure hunter even claimed to have dug up a number of feathers, each said to be over 18 inches long, with quills as big as a man's finger, from a cave in Utah while hunting for Spanish silver. There is a pictograph of a large horned bird above the mouth of the cave. The treasure hunter in question claims that the feathers have been examined several times, and the ornithologist who examined them were unable to name the species that produced the feathers. Throughout the years, many photos have emerged of the Thunderbird. However, the mystery whether this winged beast actually exists is still highly debatable. Number 1. Butch Cassidy. The tale of Butch Cassidy is one of the most infamous Wild West stories. The most popular version of the story is the movie in which Paul Newman and Robert Redford star as Butch Cassidy in The Sundance Kid. This movie claims that the pair left the United States and fled to Bolivia, where they were reportedly killed in a shootout. This isn't the final word on the story of Butch Cassidy though. Cassidy's sister Luda says that she heard stories from acquaintances of the outlaw who claimed that they'd encountered him long after his supposed death in 1908. Lula herself says she saw him in 1925 when Cassidy supposedly showed up to a family reunion attended by Lula, their brothers and their father. Documents by historical researchers suggest the confrontation with the Bolivian authorities happened in a house while Cassidy and his fellow outlaws were going through the spoils of their latest payroll heist. 2 men died in the fight, but it's been suggested neither of them were confirmed to be Cassidy or the Sundance Kid. Other stories suggest that he escaped and gave up his life of crime, and lived in either Chile, Paraguay or Spokane in Washington for a number of years. There is some credence to this story, as Bolivian President Rene Barrientos did some research that suggested the shootout never even happened. Other people believe this story, including the Pinkerton Detective Agency, who continued searching for the outlaws past 1908. They believe the outlaws met their end in Uruguay, while Cassidy's sister maintains he died of pneumonia in Washington in 1930.